What gave you this vocational urge to be a dancer? How did it start?
Well, you know, I'm a little bit ashamed to say that the thing was, being evacuated in the war, I and the whole family went down to Dorking, and we lived in a tiny little cottage there, and the treat maybe if we could afford it every month, was to go to the Picture Palace. And the person I remember most, I know I should say Fred Astaire, of course, but the person I remember most was Carmen Miranda, and I had a burning desire to be Carmen Miranda and wear a lot of bananas and fruits like that, which, of course, you never saw in the war, to wear things like that on my head. Later, of course, I became much more conservative, and I just thought shiny floors and feathers would be a good way to earn a living. And so when we got back to London after the war, I plagued my parents into letting me learn to dance. I went to a local dancing school and nipped about a bit, but it wasn't really till I went to the Royal Ballet that it became serious.
Yes.
The school.
Mm-hmm. What was your first appearance?
First ever.
Apart from walking on with the Bolshoi.
And not counting the opera ballet, you mean? I was a peasant lad in Coppelia. We sat around at the back and waved to everybody when they came on and looked very happy all the time, I remember.
What are the odds against becoming a soloist?
Oh, colossal.
Are they?
Yes, colossal. When I was at the, when I joined, it was the Sadler's Wells when I joined. When I joined there were, I suppose, only about 12 boys altogether, of which I think, by the time we got out and started to work with the company, I think there were 1, 2, maybe 2 left out of that 12.
Yes.
So, not good.
Now, the life of a young dancer is a pretty grueling one. A lot of work.
Yes.
Every morning at the bar.
Oh, it's dreadful. It's a slog. I mean, it was the loveliest thing that ever happened to me, not having to do that anymore. Because the big thing about being a dancer is your ego gets a lovely lot of bolstering. You go on there at the Opera House in the evenings and you finish your performance and they throw lots of flowers and you wade around the stage knee-deep in roses and things, and they stand up and cheer for a quarter of an hour and you feel like $1 million. Of course you do. It's wonderful. And it's lovely to be blasé about it because it's all happening. So your ego is fed, but then on the other side of the scales, come 10:15 the following morning, you're in class, being really bad and having somebody tell you that you're a disgrace and you shouldn't be allowed on any stage anywhere. Yes. That's a very good balance to live with as an art, as a creative thing. It's a good balance to have.
You danced with the touring section of the Royal Ballet for a long time, didn't you?
6 years.
And that meant travels all over the place.
6 years on tour. I'm very proud of it now. Looking back on it, I realized that it is when I learned any stagecraft that I have, because one of the qualities, I suppose, which I admire most in any entertainer is economy. And the thing you learn from doing 8 shows a week for 6 years is economy, because you're so dead on your feet.
Yes.
Come around the second year, you get to be so tired that anything that isn't strictly necessary you start to eliminate. So you begin to get an eye for what is important and what isn't, and all the fussiness and the mess that you start off with when you're very young and you want to prove that you're the greatest thing that ever hit the stage. All of that begins to drop away and you start getting left with the bones, which is... So looking back at it now, it was the most useful, the best time for me.
Yes. And overseas travels, of course.
Oh, the world. I never went to Russia and I never went to Japan, but I went pretty well everywhere else. We did 8 months in Australia, New Zealand. We did the whole of Europe, South Africa, where I met my wife. America, of course.
Yes. And, of course, when the performance is over, then the day isn't over. There are still the presentations and the parties and receptions, and all that has to be gone through.
Particularly in America, but generally speaking everywhere. Obviously the Arts Council and the embassy people want to... It's a big prestige thing when the Royal Ballet arrive, and they want to meet you and all of that. And so usually after the performance there was some kind of celebration. Very tiring. Because one has to... It's amazing, but one gets asked the most extraordinary questions. I mean, I can understand that hundreds of people have never seen a ballet, but you know, if I could tell you how many times I've been asked whether it hurts to go on your points, and in the end you begin to say, yes, it's awfully painful, because of course it is, but men just never do it, but I mean, you know, that's what they want to hear, but odd, isn't it? They don't, they've never seen a ballet, obviously.
You were doing very well indeed. You were still in your mid-20s and you decided to give up dancing. Why?
Basically, the short answer to that is I thought I had a greater potential as an actor. I had always, my reputation had been made as being an interpretive dancer. And I thought, I'm 23, 24, I don't want to spend the next 15 years trying to jump higher than anybody else or spin more times, because if I did that, I'd be a candidate for the Olympics. That's what they do, that's pure athletics, I don't want to do that. I thought, why am I wasting this energy doing that when I could use all my energy in trying to think why people do what they do, which is ultimately the most interesting thing in the world. Yes. I'm interpretive, that's what interests me.
What was your first acting role after you gave up dancing?
I did Dorian Gray, an evil, degenerate man who could look blonde and romantic all the way through. So I thought my appearance won't be against me, and it will give me a chance to see if I can act at all and how well this experiment is going to work.
Oh, you did this at the Palace Theatre Watford, didn't you?
I did, and...
Then you played in Regent's Park in Cyrano de Bergerac.
Mm-hmm.
You've done a lot of work, and very varied work, for that controversial director, Ken Russell. What was the first thing you did for him?
I played the part of Eric Femby in the Delius film, The Song of Summer.
Which was a tremendous success. Then you did two of his feature films, Music Lovers you were in.
I did The Music Lovers and I did Women in Love before that. A non-speaking part in Women in Love, and then The Music Lovers. And then we made Strauss for the BBC between that. Richard Strauss, which upset everybody, and they never show it. It's banned. They showed it once, and then they asked a lot of questions in the house, and then it was never shown again.
Yes. And then The Boyfriend.
And then The
Complete
Boyfriend.
contrast. Now, had you ever done any tap dancing before? Had that come in the Royal Ballet School curriculum?
No, nowhere near. No, I'd shuffled around a bit, I suppose, in the early days before I went to the Royal Ballet School, but I'd never done any. I went along to lessons. Twiggy and I went and had lessons together. We tapped away for a bit. It was great fun. Tap dancing, thoroughly to be recommended. It's great fun.
Yes. You've been doing quite a bit of Shakespeare lately. You had a year at Stratford.
I did.
What did you play?
Well, the interesting one of the year was Lysander in The Dream, because I was in Peter Brook's production of The Dream, which is now, I think, very well known. They've done it at the Aldwych, and it's going on a world tour and everything. And working with Peter Brook was, in retrospect, a wonderful experience. While it was happening, again, awful. So many of these things are awful when they're happening. Peter Brook has at that time, he had an incredible rehearsal technique, which I'd never come up against before, which was that if you went in and did what you did the day before, he said, don't waste my time, I saw that yesterday. And if you did something new, he said, if you're going to change everything as soon as it's right, then we're never going to get anywhere, you're wasting time. So really, whatever you did was wrong. It was nerve-wracking, to say the least, but...
What was he aiming at?
He was aiming at getting actors to dig around and think, are there any possibilities I haven't thought of yet? You see, an actor, it's too easy for an actor to say, well, I played a young romantic chap who was in love with such and such a girl 3 plays ago, and it worked quite well. I'll do that again, and it'll work. Yes. Peter Brook's technique is never to go back onto a winning formula, make it new, find something else, look around in yourself and find something new every time. Yes. It's a wonderful thing to do as an actor. Scary, but wonderful.